The rain came down hard enough to erase the stars. Jonas Rourke's boots hammered the mud, coat flaring behind him, Colt in his right hand, breath raw in his throat. The lantern light ahead swung wildly, then vanished, swallowed by the black of the pines. He could hear her stumbling somewhere in that darkness, splashing through the creek, gasping like a trapped animal. "Annie!" he shouted once, not in anger. In warning, Dot. The reply was the sound of branches snapping, frantic and unsteady. Dot. They were on his land now, both of them, but only one was running for her life. The other was hunting her. Jonas had seen the man's face an hour ago. Wet eyes, smile too wide, hand twitching over a knife handle. A stranger in town, they said, though the sheriff spoke his name like it was a curse from years back. And now Jonas could smell whiskey on the wind. He crested the rise and froze. Through the trees below, moonlight broke the clouds just long enough to reveal her. The girl was small, no coat, dress torn at the hem, hair plastered to her cheeks. She glanced back, saw him, and flinched like he was the danger to. Then another figure appeared behind her. Broad shoulders, hat brim dripping, a low chuckle that carried even over the storm. Jonas fired into the air. The echo rolled across the hills. The big man didn't stop, didn't even look up. That was when Jonas realized something was wrong. This wasn't just a chase. The man wanted Jonas to see him. Lightning split the sky. In that strobe of white, the stranger reached for the girl's wrist. She screamed, high, sharp, and short-lived as his hand closed. Jonas ran. He tore downhill, boots slipping, heart pounding harder than the rain. His gun was up, finger tight on the trigger. The man turned, slow as a mountain, his grip still locked on the girl. The moon slid back behind the clouds. Jonas lost sight of them. Just black on black. Somewhere ahead, wood splintered. The slam of a door. The cabin. His cabin. Jonas should have felt relief, but the hair on his neck stood up instead. He'd been around men like this before. Men who walked into a stranger's home like it was a saloon brawl. They didn't leave without blood on their hands. Jonas burst into the clearing. The cabin's front door was wide open, lamplight spilling onto the rain. Inside, the girl's shadow jerked against the wall, the big man looming over her. "Let her go," Jonas said, voice like gravel. The man turned his head slow, grin widening. "Rourke," he said, like he'd been expecting him all along. That was the first time Jonas wondered if tonight wasn't about the girl at all. Before Jonas could move, the man shoved her toward the table. She hit the edge hard, a plate shattering at her feet. She scrambled back, eyes darting to Jonas like he was her only chance. "Got yourself a lively one," the man said. "Didn't figure you for a charity sort." Jonas kept the Colt level. "Last chance." The stranger stepped forward. Rainwater dripped from his hat brim, tapping the floor. His boots made no sound on the wood. "Or what?" he asked. Jonas squeezed the trigger. The shot roared in the small room, glass falling from the window behind the man. But when the smoke cleared, the stranger was still standing. Jonas's gut went cold. He'd missed. Or maybe the man hadn't moved. The girl screamed again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was warning. Jonas felt it before he saw it. The shadow shifting in the far corner. Another man, tall, lean, rifle in his hands. He'd walked right into it. The second man's voice was soft, almost polite. "Put it down, Mr. Rourke." Jonas's mind was already moving, counting distances, guessing shots, measuring how fast the girl could move if he... The rifle clicked. Jonas's heartbeat slowed. He'd been in worse spots, but not by much. Behind the rifleman, the first man reached for the girl again. She bit him, hard. His bellow shook the walls. The grip on the rifle wavered just enough. Jonas dove sideways, the Colt barking again. Once, twice, sparks off the stove, wood splinters in the air. The girl was on the floor, crawling toward him, tears streaking through the dirt on her cheeks. "Move!" he shouted, grabbing her arm, yanking her toward the door. They made it 2 steps before the first man's hand closed on Jonas's shoulder, spinning him hard enough to knock the gun from his grip. The fist came next, a hammer to the jaw, and Jonas tasted blood. Somewhere in the blur, the girl screamed his name. And that was the moment Jonas realized. She didn't even know him before tonight. 3 days earlier, the rain hadn't come yet. The sky was clear, brittle blue, and the wind carried only dust. Jonas Rourke was in the back of Harlow's general store, counting nails into a burlap sack, when he first heard her name. "She's trouble," old Mrs. Burney was telling the butcher in that half-whisper meant to be overheard. "Wild as a brush mare. Cooked at the mining camp for a spell, till they chased her out." Jonas kept his eyes on the scale, but the voices carried. "Chased?" the butcher asked. Mrs. Burney sniffed. "No woman leaves a job up there without reason. Word is she's got a temper, knows too much, and men don't like a woman who says no in front of the others." Jonas tied the sack shut. He'd known mining camps, knew exactly what chased her out really meant. When he stepped out front, she was standing by the water trough. Not tall, not heavy, but she had a presence that filled the street. Her hair was dark, tangled at the ends like she'd cut it herself. Her dress was faded and patched in places, but clean. She was rinsing an apple, watching the water run red with dust before she took a bite. Her eyes flicked to him. Not friendly, not shy, just measuring. "Afternoon," Jonas said. She nodded once, kept eating. He could have left it there, and probably should have. But an hour later, he saw her again, this time outside the boarding house. A man was crowding her against the wall, voice low but sharp. Jonas caught only pieces. "Me." And, "You don't walk away." Jonas didn't think. He just walked over. "Something wrong here?" The man turned. Younger than Jonas, but with that brittle look in his eyes that came from too many fights won against people who couldn't fight back. "Not your business, Rourke." Jonas shifted his weight, just enough so his coat fell open over the colt at his hip. "Looks like it is now." The man's lip curled, but he stepped back, muttering something about crazy women and stupid ranchers as he left. She didn't thank him, didn't even look at him, just adjusted the strap on the small carpet bag at her side and walked into the boarding house without a word. Jonas figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 nights later, he was eating stew at the saloon when the door banged open and Sheriff Calhoun came in with 2 deputies and a man Jonas had never seen before, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like black stones and a smile that didn't touch them. "New cook's in town," the sheriff said loudly, glancing toward the kitchen. "Hired her myself. Best biscuits you ever had." Jonas looked up from his plate just in time to see her step out from the kitchen with a tray. She froze when she saw the man standing beside the sheriff. The man smiled wider. "Evening, Annie." The tray rattled in her hands. That was the first time Jonas saw fear in her eyes. The man didn't move toward her, didn't need to. "I hear you've been working honest," he said. "That's good. Be a shame if you forgot who's been keeping you alive all these years." The sheriff winced but said nothing. The deputies didn't even look up. Jonas had seen enough. He finished his stew, left 2 coins on the table, and walked out. But the image stuck with him, her frozen there, knuckles white on the tray, eyes locked on a man who seemed to own the ground under her feet. The next morning he saw her again, this time on the edge of town, walking the dusty road with her carpet bag and no coat. "Heading somewhere?" he asked, reining in beside her. She glanced at him, suspicious. "Out." "Out's a big place, bigger than here." Jonas hesitated, then said, "My ranch is a day's ride north. Could use help in the kitchen." She gave him that measuring look again. "You hire all your help from the road?" "Just the ones who look like they're about to starve." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. But then she shook her head. "Thanks, but I'm not looking to stay anywhere long." He watched her walk away. By the time she disappeared over the hill, he had already decided if she made it to the edge of the valley, she'd be gone forever. That night, the storm rolled in from the west. Jonas sat on his porch, listening to it chew the horizon, and thought about the way she'd frozen in that saloon. The next morning, she was on his porch, soaked through, shivering. "They found me," she said. Jonas stepped aside without a word. 2 days later, they were in the middle of supper when a shadow crossed the porch window. Jonas' hand went to his gun. She looked up, eyes wide, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Is it him?" she whispered. Jonas didn't answer. The knock came once, slow, heavy. He knew that sound. A man not asking to be let in, just announcing that he already had. The knock didn't come again. Jonas stood just inside the door, Colt in hand, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. The girl, Annie, though she hadn't told him her name until yesterday, was frozen at the table. The lantern light painted her face pale. "You want me to answer it?" she whispered. Jonas shook his head once. Outside, boots shifted on the porch boards. Not pacing, just weight moving from one foot to the other, waiting. Jonas had lived long enough to know that some men like to give you time to get scared. He opened the door slow. The man from the saloon stood there, hat low against the rain, smile as thin as it had been that night. Two others stood just beyond the lamplight, one tall and lean, the other built like a stone wall, even in. "G. Rourke," the man said. "Name's Bragg. Heard you've got something belongs to me." Jonas didn't move. "Nothing here for you." Bragg's smile twitched. "Funny, I could have sworn I saw her walk in." He tilted his head toward Annie. "She's been running a while, left without paying what she owes." Annie's voice cut in sharp from behind Jonas. "I don't owe you anything." Bragg's gaze slid past Jonas like he wasn't even there. "Annie, you've got a talent for making bad situations worse." Jonas stepped out onto the porch, shutting the door behind him. The rain slicked the boards under his boots. "You've said your piece," Jonas said. "Now ride on." Bragg's smile finally dropped. "You don't want to plant yourself in front of me, Rourke. Not over this one. She's got a history. You think you're helping her? You're not. You're buying yourself trouble you can't afford." Jonas thought of the way Annie had shown up on his porch, soaked through and shaking, saying only, "They found me." He holstered the Colt, not because he wasn't ready to use it, but because he wanted his next words to land clear. "She stays," Jonas said. The rain hit the silence between them like nails on a roof. Bragg's jaw worked once, twice. Then he nodded toward the big man at his side. The big man stepped forward. His boots made the porch groan. Jonas could smell whiskey and sweat even over the rain. "You don't want to fight me?" Jonas said evenly. The big man grinned. "I do, though." That was the moment Annie yanked the door open behind Jonas. "Stop it!" she shouted. "You want me? You take me! Just leave him alone!" Jonas turned, and in that split second, Bragg's voice cut like a knife. "Too late for that." From the darkness, the tall man leveled a rifle, aimed not at Jonas, but at the window where Annie stood. Jonas moved without thinking. His shoulder hit her hard enough to knock her back into the room. The shot cracked, splinters spraying from the doorframe. Jonas hit the floor rolling, Colt already up, firing once toward the rifle flash. The shot went wide in the rain. Bragg didn't flinch. "Consider that a warning," Bragg said. "Tomorrow night, we come back. You'll hand her over, or we take her, and take you with her." They stepped off the porch like they'd just settled a debt. Jonas stayed kneeling in the doorway until their horses' hoofbeats were swallowed by the storm. When he finally shut the door, Annie was standing in the middle of the room, eyes wide, hands trembling at her sides. "You should have let them," she said. Jonas shook his head. "That's not how I work. You don't know them. You don't know what they'll do." Jonas's voice was quiet but hard. "Don't matter." She stared at him like he was either the bravest or the dumbest man she'd ever seen. Maybe both. He poured himself a shot of whiskey and didn't offer her any. He figured she needed clear thoughts tonight. "They'll be back," she said. "Yeah." "And they'll bring more men?" Jonas met her eyes. "Yeah." Annie swallowed. "Then you've got one day to decide whether I'm worth dying for." Jonas didn't answer. He'd already made that decision the moment he stepped onto the porch. But he didn't tell her that. The next morning was gray and still, the kind of sky that made a man feel watched. Jonas was fixing the corral gate when he saw dust on the horizon, not from riders, but from a wagon. The wagon rolled into the yard just before noon. Sheriff Calhoun climbed down, hat in hand, eyes scanning the house before they settled on Jonas. "Rourke," he said, "we need to talk." Jonas wiped his hands on a rag. "About?" The sheriff's mouth tightened. "Bragg was in my office last night. Says you're harboring a fugitive. Claims she stole from him. Says if you don't hand her over, he'll see to it himself." Jonas's jaw tightened. "You believe him?" The sheriff hesitated. "Doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is Bragg's got half the town in his pocket, and the other half too scared to cross him. Then you're here to tell me to give her up. I'm here to tell you if I don't see her in my custody by sundown tomorrow, I can't stop what's coming." Jonas didn't move. "You done?" Calhoun sighed, looked past Jonas toward the house. "She's got a choice to make, and so do you." The sheriff climbed back onto the wagon and rolled away. Jonas watched the dust trail disappear. Inside the house, Annie was standing at the window, watching him. "You're going to fight them," she said. Jonas didn't answer. Her voice was quieter now. "Then I should tell you why they're after me." Jonas turned. Her hands were twisting the hem of her dress. "I didn't steal from Bragg," she said. "I took something and he thinks he owns." "What?" Her eyes lifted to his. "Me." By evening, the valley felt smaller. Jonas had lived here 12 years, and the land had always been quiet. A slow, steady place where nothing came unless you invited it. Now the quiet felt different. It was the quiet before the first crack of a rifle. Annie moved through the house like a shadow. She'd found one of his old coats and rolled the sleeves twice, but it still hung on her like a blanket. "They'll come at night," she said. Jonas was cleaning the Winchester on the kitchen table. "Most likely." She stopped in the doorway. "You can still let me go. I know the trails. I can keep ahead of them." Jonas didn't look up. "They'll track you in the dark, and if they don't find you, they'll burn this place to the ground out of spite." Her hands curled into fists in the sleeves. "Then what do you suggest?" "Barricade. Load every gun in the house, and make sure you've got somewhere to drop if bullets come through the windows." She stared at him for a long moment, then turned and started moving chairs and crates without another word. By dusk, the sky was a flat, bloodless gray. Jonas spotted the first rider on the ridge just before sunset. The man wasn't coming closer, just sitting there, hat brim low, watching the house. Half an hour later, there were 3 of them. By full dark, the lantern light caught the shine of gunmetal on the tree line. Jonas snuffed the lamps and kept the fire low. "They're not rushing us," Annie whispered from the floor by the window. "No," Jonas said. "They want us awake all night." She hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" He kept his eyes on the dark. "Ask." "Why? Why risk all this for me? You don't even know me." Jonas didn't answer right away. He thought of faces he hadn't seen in years, faces he had failed to save. Finally, he said, "Because nobody else would." She didn't say anything after that. Near midnight, the sound started, slow hoofbeats circling the house. Not close enough for a shot, just close enough for the creak of saddle leather to carry through the walls. Jonas leaned to the window, tracking shadows between the trees. "They're counting doors and windows. They already know where they are." "Doesn't matter. They're looking for weaknesses." He moved to the back door, checked the bar across it, then glanced toward the loft. "You can sleep up there if you want. It's warmer." She shook her head. "Not tonight." The first shot came just before dawn. A single crack that punched through the front shutters and buried itself in the far wall. Annie dropped to the floor instinctively. Jonas was already at the window, scanning for the muzzle flash. There it was, 50 yards out, low to the ground. He squeezed the trigger. The Winchester's kick thumped against his shoulder. A figure rolled out of sight. For a few minutes, nothing. Then a voice carried from the trees. "Bragg's. Jonas, you've had your fun. Time to quit pretending you're a hero and hand her over." Jonas leaned into the window. "You want her? Come get her." Bragg laughed, slow and cold. "We'll take our time. See how long your food lasts. See how long she lasts with no sleep." The voice faded, replaced by the sound of retreating hoofbeats. Annie looked at him, pale. "They're not leaving." "No," Jonas said. "They're settling in." The day passed in tension. Every creak of wood or rustle of leaves pulled Jonas to a window. Annie made bread because it kept her hands busy, but she forgot to eat it. By afternoon, the riders were visible again. This time more of them. 6, maybe 7, always just far enough to make a bullet a gamble. Jonas counted the ammunition. It wasn't enough for a drawn-out fight. "They'll try to burn us out," he said. Annie's eyes widened. "Then what?" "Then we run." That night, the air felt heavier. Jonas could smell smoke even before he heard the first crackle. He yanked open the back door and saw it, a small fire crawling toward the barn. "Stay inside!" he shouted to Annie as he sprinted into the yard, dousing the flames with a bucket from the rain barrel. The shot came from somewhere high, the ridge to the west. The bullet chewed the dirt near his boots. Jonas dove behind the trough and fired back blind, buying himself just enough time to get the last of the fire out. When he got back inside, Annie was shaking. "They're trying to draw you out," she said. Jonas nodded. "Won't be the last time." Just before midnight, a single rider approached the porch. Jonas kept the rifle trained on the door, while Annie crouched by the hearth. The knock came, soft this time. "Rourke," Bragg's voice called. "Let's talk like men." Jonas didn't move. "I've been generous," Bragg went on. "Tomorrow night I won't be, and I won't knock." The hoofbeats faded, and the night swallowed the sound. Jonas let the rifle sag just enough to feel the weight of his own heartbeat. Annie's voice was barely a whisper. "What if they come before tomorrow night?" Jonas glanced toward the window. Outside, in the faint light of the moon, he could see them, riders on every side, just far enough to vanish if he blinked. "They're already here," he said. The second night was worse. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy enough to bend the rafters. The riders stayed close, silhouettes shifting against the tree line, murmurs just loud enough to remind them they weren't alone. Jonas sat at the table, oiling the Winchester. Annie was by the window, knees drawn up to her chest under the coat. She'd barely spoken since the knock. Finally, she broke the silence. "You want to know why Bragg thinks he owns me?" Jonas didn't look up. "If you want to tell me." Her eyes stayed on the dark beyond the glass. "I was 15 when I met him. My stepfather lost the farm, said I had to work to keep us fed. Bragg was running freight between the camps and the ranches. Said he could give me steady pay as a cook." Jonas kept working in the cloth over the rifle barrel. "It was steady," she said, "for about a month. Then the work got different. He'd take me with him to camps where the men didn't care what a girl's answer was. Said if I didn't make them happy, I was stealing from him. Said I owed him for every meal I ate, every mile he hauled me." Jonas's jaw flexed. "One night, a miner tried to keep me. Bragg beat him half to death, not because of me, but because the man didn't pay him first. That's when I knew. I wasn't working for Bragg. I was the work." She hugged her knees tighter. "I left when I could. Stole a horse and rode till it died under me. Got jobs where no one asked questions. But he always found me. I never knew why he cared so much about bringing me back." Jonas set the rifle aside. "Because you left. Men like Bragg can't stand to lose what they think is theirs, even if they don't want it anymore." Annie's voice was small. "You think we can stop him?" Jonas leaned back, eyes on the ceiling beams. "I've stopped men worse, but not without a price." They talked less after that, but the air between them had changed. Jonas told her about the war, not the battles, but the winter shifter, the way the cold seemed to find you even when you had a fire, and how the men who made it through didn't always make it home. He told her about the partner he'd buried 10 years ago, a man who'd taken a bullet meant for him. Annie listened without asking questions. When she finally spoke again, it was to say, "If they kill you, Bragg will take me alive just to make sure you died for nothing." Jonas met her eyes. "Then I guess we can't let them kill me." Just before dawn, movement caught his eye. He was at the window before his brain was fully awake. 3 riders were breaking from the tree line, heading for the barn. Jonas grabbed his hat and rifle. "Stay here," he told her. "Like hell," she said, already pulling on her boots. They hit the porch together. Jonas dropped to one knee and fired. The lead rider swerved hard, the horse's hooves tearing at the frost-stiff grass. The other 2 fired back, splinters snapping off the barn wall. Annie crouched behind the trough, reloading as fast as he could shoot. She was clumsy with the shells, but her hands didn't shake. After 2 volleys, the riders peeled off, retreating into the trees. Jonas lowered the rifle, breathing hard. "That was a probe," he said. "What's that mean?" "It means they wanted to see how we'd fight. Next time, they won't stop." They fortified the house until their fingers were raw. Heavier bars on the doors, extra shutters nailed tight, water drawn and stored inside. Jonas even set a line of lanterns at the far edge of the yard, so any approach would show shadows before they reached the house. That afternoon, no riders came into view. The silence was worse than their taunts. Annie paced the kitchen, wearing the floorboards thin. "Maybe they left," she said without conviction. Jonas shook his head. "They're making you hope." She stopped pacing. "And then?" He loaded the last of the shotgun shells. "And then they take it away." When the sun dipped low, Jonas stepped onto the porch to light the outer lanterns. The air was dead. Still, no wind, no bird calls. That's when he saw it. Far out on the ridge, a column of riders. Not 3, not 6, a dozen. They weren't moving fast. They didn't have to. Jonas turned back toward the door. Annie was standing there, pale in the lantern light. "They'll be here tonight," he said. She didn't ask how he knew. She just closed the door behind him and slid the bar into place. An hour later, the sound started. The slow beat of hooves in unison, carrying through the dark like a war drum. Jonas and Annie took their positions, rifles ready, hearts pounding in time with that rhythm. The hoofbeats stopped just outside the circle of lantern light. Bragg's voice rang out. "Rourke, you've had your warning. Now you've got a choice. Send her out, or I burn this place to the ground with you both inside." Jonas's reply was steady. "Come try." Bragg laughed. "You're going to wish you hadn't said that." Somewhere out in the dark, something whooshed through the air. The smell hit Jonas first. Kerosene. The lantern light flickered against glass bottles arcing through the air toward the porch. The first bottle shattered against the porch rail. Flames crawled across the wood like they'd been waiting for the chance. Jonas kicked it into the mud, boot heel grinding out the fire before it could catch. Another bottle burst against the shutters, sending a sheet of flame up the side of the cabin. "Back wall!" he shouted. Annie was already there, dousing the sparks with water from the barrel they'd hauled in earlier. Her face was slick with sweat, her hair plastered to her cheeks. Through the flames, Bragg's voice came again. "Last chance, Rourke!" Jonas didn't answer, just fired through the gap between shutters. One of the riders dropped, rolling into the dirt. The rest scattered back, but not far enough. "They're testing our water," Jonas said, breath ragged. "See how long before we run dry." Annie wiped her sleeve across her face. "Then we hit them first." Jonas gave her a sharp look. "You shoot from here, I'll draw them in. You won't make it back." "Maybe not, but they won't make it forward either." The next bottle came low, smashing just shy of the porch steps. Jonas waited for the flare, then shouldered the Winchester and sprinted through the smoke. Shots cracked from the tree line, splinters chasing him into the yard. He dove behind the trough, rolled, and sent 3 rounds toward the muzzle flashes. One man toppled backward out of the saddle. From the porch, Annie's rifle barked. 1, 2, 3 shots, driving the riders deeper into the trees. Jonas was up again, charging to the edge of the lantern light. A shadow lunged at him from the side. The big man he'd seen on the first night, moving faster than a man his size should. They hit the ground hard. Jonas felt the air punch out of his lungs. The man's fists came like hammers, one catching his jaw, the other glancing off his temple. Jonas jammed his knee up, caught the man in the gut, and rolled them both into the mud. The big man came up swinging again, until the crack of Annie's rifle split the night. The man went still, eyes wide, and slumped into the dirt. Jonas looked toward the porch. Annie was reloading, hands steady, jaw clenched. "You good?" she called. He spat blood. "Better than him." From the ridge, Bragg's voice carried again, louder now, ragged with anger. "Burn it all! I want nothing left!" Men poured from the trees, bottles in one hand, pistols in the other. Jonas and Annie fired until the barrels steamed, dropping 2, maybe 3, but there were too many. Flames bloomed at the barn, then along the fence line. Jonas knew what was coming next. Once the barn went, the house was next. He ducked inside, grabbed the shotgun, and shoved it into Annie's hands. "If they breach the door, don't hesitate." Her eyes locked on his. "Where are you going? To make sure they can't light the last fire." He slipped out the back, keeping low, moving along the fence toward the barn. Heat licked at his face as the roof groaned under the flames. A figure stepped from the smoke. Bragg. The firelight turned his grin into something feral. "Should have listened, Rourke. Now you'll die tired." Jonas leveled the Colt. "Maybe, but you're dying too." They fired almost in the same breath. Jonas felt the burn in his side but didn't drop. Bragg staggered back, hand clutching his chest, eyes going wide with something between shock and rage. "You don't know," he gasped. Then he was down, the mud drinking his blood as fast as the flames devoured the barn. Jonas stumbled back toward the house, vision tunneling. Through the haze, he saw 2 riders breaking for the porch. Annie was already there, the shotgun booming twice, knocking one clean from the saddle and sending the other wheeling into the dark. By the time Jonas reached the steps, the remaining men were riding hard for the ridge. Without Bragg, there was nothing to hold them together. Annie dropped the shotgun and caught his arm, half dragging him inside. "Sit," she ordered, already fetching the whiskey and torn linen. He sank into the chair, the pain in his side pulsing with every heartbeat. "They're gone." "For now," she said, pressing cloth to the wound. The fire outside burned itself out with the barn. Dawn came slow, light spilling over the blackened fence and the smoldering ruin where the hay had been. Jonas sat on the porch, bandaged and sore, watching smoke drift into the pale sky. Annie brought him coffee, her own cup cradled in both hands. "They'll hear about this," she said. "Bragg had friends." Jonas took a sip. "So do I." She gave him a look, half disbelief, half something else. "You didn't have to do it." "Yeah," he said. "I did." They sat in silence a long time, the only sound the crackle of cooling embers. When the sun finally cleared the ridge, Annie set her cup down. "If you still want to cook, I'm staying, at least until the next storm." Jonas looked at her, the corner of his mouth tugging into the faintest smile. "You'll stay longer than that." For the first time since he'd met her, she didn't argue. And though the night had cost him blood, and the barn was gone, Jonas knew the house felt less empty now.